It's the All Things Strange podcast. We are your hosts, Agent Anderson
and Agent Ether.
Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can check us out on the Discord. We also have a Patreon. And if you are so inclined, you can check out all of the show's links in the description on the Linktree, where you can find a blog and a merchandise store. That's right. All right, we also have an email. You can find it in the Linktree as well. This week's episode, the Tully Saucer Nest.
Good try.
Yeah, it was a decent effort, right? We got to figure something out.
Yeah,
we got to write something down or something. I don't know. It was not horrible, I guess. Not the worst podcast intro I've heard. That's for sure. All right. Well, we are sans ETA for the moment. He says his internet is down, as it often is where he lives. And so for now, it's just Agent Ether and myself for the Tully Saucer Nest.
Well, first, remember I was going to tell a joke.
Oh, yeah. Agent Ether has a joke for everybody.
I saw this online, and I thought it was pretty funny. 3 conspiracy theorists walk into a bar.
Yes.
That can't be a coincidence. It's just so bad.
That's like a dad joke.
I love them.
That's funny. Yeah.
Before we get started, though, I wanted to mention our strange news.
Oh, yeah. Go for it. This is awesome.
It's actually local strange news. So there's a park that we like to take our kids to. We've been up here now about, oh my gosh, it's been 10 years up in the Santa Rosa area. And there's a cute little park and it has a big man-made lake. And it's called Lake Raffine. And my uncle, who lives out of state, I don't know why, sends me this. I don't know how he even saw it in the news. There's a snapping turtle, and they think it's actually, I think they called it an alligator snapping turtle in the lake. Someone's illegal pet, probably, that they set loose.
And it's sort of like a cryptid, I guess. Right?
I guess. It's the size of a tire. It is big, and local officials are warning it will take your foot off.
What kind of tire are we talking about? Like an RC car tire?
Like a spare tire.
Spare tire. That's a pretty big sized turtle.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with the jaws. The jaws, I will post a picture. It looks kind of nasty.
It does. It also looks kind of cool. We should go see if we can find it.
They had some pictures of it swimming like through the water, which is kind of murky, like underneath. But a couple people have reported sightings in the area.
We live within walking distance of that park. It's pretty close.
I don't know about biking distance.
I've walked there before.
Biking distance.
But it's pretty cool to see something so close to where you live in the news. Even if it's not like a Bigfoot, it's just a turtle. But it's still pretty cool.
It's a big turtle.
Big turtle. It's a big boy.
That's my strange news.
All right. Well, we chose this one. This one was chosen by our Patreon subscribers. We've got 3 tiers. The first tier is you get access to early access, I should say, and after hours. The second tier, you get bonus episodes. And the third tier, in addition, you get to vote on upcoming topics. And this one was voted upon by our Patreon subscribers.
Thank you, Patreon subscribers, for my new mic stand.
Yeah. I just got Agent Ether. So I had a cheap mic stand that I bought on Amazon before for her, and it just wouldn't stay up. Like, it kept falling slowly over the episode. And it was a cheap one. It's like probably $20 or something, because, we don't have a huge budget for this show. So
no budget.
Yeah.
So no budget for this show.
Well, we do, actually, thanks to the Patreon subscribers.
That's right.
So I went and found the Rolls Royce of microphone stands. It was like $80. I got it for her, and it is nice. It's really nice.
I got headphones, I got a mic, I got a stand. We're good to go.
Yeah, it does not fall or sink anymore. It stays exactly where you want it to be. It's pretty sweet.
All right.
The bonus episode this week was the Watergate Scandal, part 1. It's longer than I thought it would be, so it's going to be a 2-parter. We'll do part 2 next week. Your microphone is no longer pointing at your mouth because
I didn't touch it.
No, you're going to break it. Don't do that. Agent Ether is trying to break my Rolls Royce of microphone stands. All right, give me a moment. I will adjust it for you. Hold on.
Hit the flag.
People like to hear microphone adjustments.
I don't think they do. Hit the flag. Do it. Thank you. All right. You want to get started?
So let's get to it. The 1966 Tully Saucer Nest.
Now, I saw this referred to as the Roswell of Queensland. And after reading about the case, I thought that was a bit much.
That's a little bit of a stretch.
A little bit of a stretch, yeah.
I don't know. They like to call anything that happens outside of the United States has a chance of being referred to as the Roswell of that particular area. It's kind of overused. There's only a handful of cases where I think it's appropriate, like perhaps
Shag Harbor.
Shag Harbor, exactly what I was thinking of, you know.
I guess July 2nd is considered by some to be World UFO Day because it coincides with Roswell. But then other people celebrate it on June 24th, which coincides when Kenneth Arnold released his statement. So there's two World UFO Days, depending on what camp you fall into.
As you would expect for the UFO community, there is no agreement on anything. Well, I'm in the Kenneth Arnold camp for sure on that one because his was a landmark case. It was much more well-known than the Roswell case in its day, although over time the Roswell case did become more famous. But I think from what I've looked into, the evidence for the Kenneth Arnold case is much, much better. So I'm going with the Arnold case. Let's do that. We should do a special episode.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. It's not coming up for a while, though.
Yeah, I never heard of a UFO day before. That's not on the calendar. You know, you go and
You're supposed to go look at the skies. So it's a day to go out and like camp, go somewhere dark, get out your telescope and binoculars, and go look for UFOs.
Well, we should go do an outdoors in the woods live episode.
No, not in the woods, in the desert or something.
There's not going to be any. Well, dude, how many cases happen in the woods, though? But there's not going to be any reception there, actually, so we won't be able to do a live show. But we should record a show from the woods on the Saucer Day and then release it, when I get done editing it, which will probably be a couple of days later. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
It would be fun. We actually have a couple discussions we need to have about upcoming holidays. We need to do a Halloween episode. That's coming up. So we almost have 1 million downloads. We're going to do a special episode for that.
Yeah, let me see. How close are we? Let me check.
It's always fun to check. You got to ping it occasionally and check out the downloads and
I've been watching
see how close we are.
I've been checking it. It's pretty exciting stuff. We are 976.1 thousand. So we're getting there.
Probably another month or two?
No, less than a month, probably.
Less than a month?
It depends. The numbers change quite a lot. There seems to be no rhyme or reason to it, you know. One episode will get a lot of downloads and another will get hardly any at all. I'm not sure why. But in general, the cases that are the more popular topics tend to get more downloads. But that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. There are some surprises as well. But yeah, what can you do? Either way, it goes up over time. And probably within, 2 or 3 weeks, we'll probably hit 1 million there.
Very exciting stuff.
Pretty cool. I never imagined we'd get that many downloads. It's pretty crazy we got that many downloads. Now, compared to other podcasts that are, have larger audiences, 1 million is probably nothing. But for me, that's pretty damn cool.
All right. You want to get into it?
Let's get into it. All right. So this happened in 1966, which, as we've talked about before on this show, there's a ton of great cases from 66. We're dealing with a genuine worldwide flap during that year. There was just crazy stuff being seen all over the world. In fact, the very first episode I did was the 1966 Michigan swamp gas sightings, which that one is a really cool event. It involved, multiple witnesses over several days, lots of different people from different walks of life, everything from, young women at college to police officers to farmers to everything. Anybody and everybody saw this stuff. Is really cool incident. But anyways,
and yet the first Google hit I got, so when I started searching for information for this case, it literally said saucer hysteria, the Tully case of 1966.
It wasn't really a hysteria.
No, but that was like the first thing that popped up, which is a shame.
That's kind of weird but I mean, that's pretty typical also. I'm not surprised by that, but it's also unfortunate because it was not a hysteria. The witnesses involved, as far as I can tell, were fairly level-headed, at least the ones I could find. you know? But this one happened all the way on the other side of the planet from us, more or less, in Queensland, Australia, in a small town called Tully. This is on the northern coast of Australia. The population of the town in 2016 was 2,390 people. So we're talking a small town.
Well, and I think this was an area outside of town.
Yeah, a little bit outside of town. Yeah, at a farm. Now, I always like looking up little tidbits of information for these localities because there are so many interesting places in the world. I will never get to visit all of them, unfortunately, but I can read about them online. So Tully was actually named after the Tully River, which itself was named after Surveyor General William Alcock Tully in the 1870s. It's one of the wettest towns in Australia and home to the, what do you think it's home to, Agent Ether?
Please don't say spiders.
You'll never guess.
Oh, kangaroos.
No, the golden gum boot.
What's that?
The golden gum boot. Well, I'm glad you asked.
Is it a plant?
No. So there was a competition between the towns of Tully, Innisfail, and Babinda to see who was the wettest town. Apparently at the time, Tully won, although I think Babinda has since been proven to be wetter. But they were awarded, or perhaps awarded themselves, a big giant rubber boot. So the town has a big giant rubber boot, and because of course they do.
Like a statue?
Yeah, kind of. You should Google it.
Okay.
Google the golden gum boot. Gum boot.
Gum like
G-U-M,
chewing gum?
one word, Gumboot. Golden gum boot. And I was just thinking, well, of course they have a golden gum boot. It's Australia. Why wouldn't they?
Do they drink out of it?
It just seems very Australian to me for some reason. I don't know.
All right, I'm looking at it. It is big and golden.
It is, to be specific, 25.9 feet or 7.9 meters tall.
What is this on it? Is that a frog?
That is a tree frog.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. There's a big tree frog on it. I like it.
It's actually made out of fiberglass, not rubber.
Ooh, look at this. There's a spiral staircase to the top. That
Yes.
reminds me of the dinosaurs out in, starts with a C, on the way to Palm
Calabasas?
Springs. Calabasas.
Yes. Yeah,
You can go inside. I guess you can go inside the gumboot.
Yeah, we'll talk about those dinosaurs in a minute. Those are pretty iconic. They were in the Pee Wee Herman movie, for example. But yeah, so this, yeah, like you said, spiral staircase. Apparently at the top, you get a good view of the town. And there's an annual Golden Gumboot Festival, which I wish I could go to because that sounds amazing. Right? But yeah, the dinosaurs outside there, I think they're in Calabasas. I don't know. They're just on the way to Palm Springs, because when I was a kid, my grandparents had a vacation house in Palm Springs. And, lest you think that I come from a wealthy family, this is back when you could buy a vacation house in Palm Springs for a couple $1,000s.
It was cheap.
It was not a big deal. Anybody who wanted one and had a regular job could buy one. It was not like a luxury thing like it is these days to have a vacation house.
Now it's just as much to live in Palm Springs as anywhere else.
Yeah, it's crazy expensive. And it's sort of interesting to see, but also kind of sad, because where that house is, behind that house used to be nothing but desert for miles and miles. And when we were kids, we would just go play back there.
With the scorpions.
Yeah, with the scorpions. We just go run and play and have fun. You'd find
scorpions,
the occasional sun-bleached rabbit skull and whatever. It was awesome for kids. But, the last time we went there before they sold the house, after my grandparents unfortunately passed away, it had all been developed. You remember that? We were walking around. We went to a Little League game.
We saw the comet.
Yes, the Hale-Bopp comet.
The Hale-Bopp comet. Wow, that was a long time ago. That was before we were married. So that was like over 25 years ago.
Long time ago, like a million years ago. Yeah. It was really fun, but it's sort of sad. But on the other hand, it's interesting to see the development. I mean, like you could see that, I think Bob Hope's house, like that saucer-shaped house, you could see that from the backyard. And
wait. What's this about a saucer-shaped house? I don't remember this.
Google it. You could see it's in the distance. Google Bob Hope's house.
Okay.
But yeah, it was an interesting place. But anyways, on the way there, between, we lived in the Los Angeles area on the outskirts. It's actually on the border of Los Angeles and Orange County. Los Angeles County and Orange County. It's not in Los Angeles, the city. It's just easier to tell people Los Angeles because people have an idea of where that is, and they don't know where Diamond Bar is. But we used to go there, a couple times a year, and every time we'd pass these dinosaurs and we would stop off, and they're just these big, giant concrete dinosaurs. And when you're a kid, it's like the coolest thing ever. I actually have a photograph of Agent Ether hugging one of the dinosaur's legs. And I'm not going to post it because she wants to remain anonymous, but it gives you an idea of the scale of the things. They are huge. They are ginormous. And you can actually go up inside of one of them. What is the Brontosaurus looking one has like a gift store inside, which is just really, really cool.
Yeah, we have a magnet on the fridge. We have an old magnet from 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's faded.
And then we have a new magnet that my brother actually got for us when he stopped by there. And it's the same magnet, but new. But we have them both on the fridge.
Yeah, and it's really, really interesting because the place was bought by creationists. That's what they're called, right?
Yeah, the people who believe that the Earth is 5,000-ish years old.
Right, it's sort of a strange place for them to build because they don't think that the dinosaurs were real from what I understand.
No. I think that some of them think dinosaurs and people lived on the planet at the same time.
Oh, okay, so they think the dinosaurs were real.
And they lived with people on the planet because otherwise where'd the dinosaur bones come from? Fossils and so forth.
Right. Well, I thought the idea was that God planted the dinosaur bones.
Oh, well, that could be it too. Maybe there's different camps.
Yeah, I'm not up to speed on this, and I don't know. But anyways, it was kind of going to ruin, like nobody was really maintaining it. Then this group bought it, and they'll hand out their information for their particular religious beliefs there, but
it's just a pamphlet. They don't bash it over your
No, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Here we go.
But
they think the dinosaurs just didn't make it onto Noah's Ark, probably because they were too big.
Oh, okay. Well,
so they were around until the time of Noah.
Makes sense.
The Great Flood.
But I just think it's great that somebody bought it and decided to maintain it because it was just built as sort of a tourist attraction, and it was sort of crumbling over the years. Nobody was maintaining it, but they're maintaining it. At least they were the last time I was there. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have friends who rolled through recently, and they said it's being well maintained.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really interesting landmark. And if you ever just so happen to be in the area, which I find extremely doubtful, but if you are, and you see big, giant concrete dinosaurs on the side of, I think it's the 10 freeway, go ahead and stop by because it's really friggin' cool. At least for me it is. It's very nostalgic for me. But anyways, wow, we are already like 20 minutes in. And we haven't even really talked about the saucer nest, but we did talk about the Gumboot Festival, so I guess it's
I'm sorry, but the dinosaurs are related to the fact that our audience wants cryptids, and one of the cryptids out there is in fact, a dinosaur, that people believe that dinosaurs still somewhere in some isolated place. It could even be under the earth. There's living dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility because there are a lot of people who think that there are big, giant caverns under the earth that have life in it. I don't know that I've seen evidence for that, but it's one of the things that's out there. But yeah, also there are dinosaurs on the planet, such as Nessie is probably descended from dinosaurs. And who knows, birds, I think birds, maybe alligators. I don't know.
So I guess they're called neo-dinosaurs, the living dinosaurs that are a category of cryptids.
Okay. We should do an episode on those.
That's what I was saying. Okay, but back to
the Tully Saucer Nest.
Saucer
All right,
Nest.
Let's get to it because it is actually surprisingly warm in this room and I don't want to be in here all night. So, the Saucer Nest is actually, it's not a term that's used for this case specifically, but it's actually just a general term that was in use at some point, which I find interesting because I'd never heard of it before. And it was a term that was apparently coined by the press. I couldn't find which case it was coined for, but when I was searching through some documents, I did find a document that said it started with 2 more saucer nests were found in Tully at the beginning of the article about Tully, suggesting that Tully was not the start of the saucer nest craze, but I didn't really have the time to find where it started, unfortunately. But Tully is probably the best known saucer nest case. It all started at 9 a.m. on January 19th, 1966. A fella named George Pedley, who was in his 20s, I think he was 26?
28.
28, okay.
Mhm.
28, he's a banana farmer. and
Sugarcane.
this is where you need ETA on the episode, right? Because ETA would be like, he was a what farmer now? Or insert ETA joke there. Anyways, he was minding his own business, driving his tractor around as, if I was 28 and I had a tractor, I would be, working, quote unquote, you can't see me, but I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. I would be working, driving my tractor around, because who wouldn't be, when he heard a hissing sound. He said it sounded like air escaping from a tire, but his tires appeared to be fine, so he kept driving. And then he saw something he could not ignore. A spaceship rose at a high speed out of a nearby swamp called the Horseshoe Lagoon, which was about 25 yards in front of him. And he said it was blue-gray, about 25 feet across and 9 feet high. It spun at a terrific rate as it rose vertically about 60 feet, then made a shallow dive and rose sharply. Traveling at a fantastic speed, it headed off in a southwesterly direction. It was out of sight in seconds. I saw no portholes or antenna, and there was no sign of life either in or about the ship. And that's his sighting.
Yeah, it was very short. What was it, 15, 20 seconds? Very short sighting, but it made quite an impression on him, that's for sure. And he said the shape was like two saucers face to face.
Right,
and there's pictures. If you go online, you can see he drew his own picture and then he signed it in cursive with a flourish.
There are also pictures of these saucer nests. Well, at least one.
Actual photos.
Yeah,
no,
actual
I've seen
photos.
a few with him and a neighbor.
I didn't look that up online because I was busy looking through documents, but I did find one picture in the documents, and it looks exactly like what he described as far as the nests. But so some sources say that the ship was vapor-like, whatever that means. But I could not find him saying that in a direct quotation. So I suspect that may be journalistic embellishment. I don't know. Anyways, so he went to the area where the object was and saw a circular area of flattened reeds. It was a swampy area. They were flattened in a clockwise direction, and the reeds were dried out. But the nearby reeds were normal. They were not affected. They were green. They were wet. He said the reeds were without exception bent below water level, dead and swirled around in a clockwise manner as if they had been subjected to some terrific rotary force.
And they were like pulled out by their roots.
Yeah. And the water, I think I have a quote later on, but the water was about supposedly like 5 feet deep or so here. And they were pulled out by their roots, which is kind of weird. He also noticed a sulfur smell. Now, by some accounts, when he was near this area, or maybe when he saw the UFO, the article wasn't really clear. He had tractor engine trouble, and then his tractor actually stopped running. But again, I didn't find a direct quote where he said that. That was in an article, so take it with a grain of salt. But that is one of the more common things you hear about in UFO sightings are engine troubles or otherwise electrical troubles.
I read that him and his neighbor, actually Albert Panisi, went out and the reeds were so dense and thick they could like stand on them.
Wow,
so
really?
That's why they call them nests.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I did not see that particular detail. That's really interesting.
I have a photo somewhere of them just hanging out on top of the nests.
Can you post that on the Discord?
No, I'm not logged into Discord. I'm on my Chromebook.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get you logged in there some other time, but not now. Maybe we can post that later if we remember, which I definitely won't because I got ADHD, which is why I need notes. Anyways, so they also found 3 large holes, sort of like landing indentations, that were beneath the nest And I found this in an article, not a direct quotation, so I'm not sure if that's true or not. But, if it is, that's very interesting. Also, 6 feet from the nest, they found a rectangular patch of grass, 5 feet by 6 feet, that was clipped off at the water level, almost as if something had taken a sample.
Huh. I didn't read that anywhere.
And I do want to point out that this is in a swampy area, just like the 1966 Michigan sightings, which a couple of them were also in swampy areas. Although they definitely were not swamp gas. If you want to hear my discussion of that, they thoroughly debunked the idea of swamp gas being responsible. Not that you really need to debunk that because of what the witnesses said, but anyways, I just thought it was interesting that both of these cases, both in 1966, both around a swampy area. Just pretty weird stuff. I don't know what to make of that, other than perhaps if you were coming here from somewhere else, you might be interested in an area that was teeming with life, that might be a swamp. And we like to think that we're the most interesting thing on the planet, but we might not be. We might be no different than anything else on the planet, in fact. And it might be more interesting to them to take grass samples than it would be to take people samples. But of course, they might be doing both.
I have a theory, actually.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Okay. Actually, we are the most interesting things on the planet, but we're a very complicated species. So if alien kids, like students, need a project for school, instead of using humans in some sort of experiment, they have to go to the swamp.
I love it. So the 1966 Tully Saucer Nest was a student project.
Yeah.
That is a really good theory. That's a new theory. I never heard of that one before. That is really excellent. You guys heard it here first. Agent Ether has come up with a brand new theory that the saucer nest and possibly other saucer incidents, not necessarily limited to 1966, are student experiments. And it makes sense because, to be honest, some of these sightings, it seems like the pilots are a little amateurish. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They seem like they don't really know what they're doing. And if they were, young students, that would check out. I love it. That is a really, really cool theory. I really like it. All right. So George initially didn't want to talk to anybody about the incident, but he ran into his neighbor, Albert Panisi, that Ether just said on his way home. Now, again, cue the Agent ETA joke, because the last name is spelled
Panisi.
Penisi. So it's nearly the word penis, but not quite. It's got an extra N and an extra I in there, unfortunately. But anyway, so George told Mr. Panisi about his experience, and Mr. Panisi said that his dog had suddenly gone mad and bounded towards the lagoon around the time of George's sighting. I think it was 5:30 in the morning. Now, later when they went to investigate the area, they saw strange footprints near the largest nest, and they said that they didn't look like animal prints, although some accounts said that they did look like animal prints, maybe by like a calf print or something.
Now, where did you find this? Because I saw a YouTube video with a ufologist who was discussing the footprints. But then I looked around to try and find like newspaper clippings. There was an interview I found on YouTube actually with the neighbor and the person who cited it initially. And neither one of them mentioned these footprints, which is kind of a big deal.
I think I saw it mentioned in an APRO bulletin, which is that's a defunct UFO organization from way back when. But I saw it mentioned in a couple of places. But again, I didn't see any direct quotes from the witnesses, so take it with a grain of salt. And it doesn't necessarily match up with the witness descriptions or with the witness description, so I take this one with a grain of salt, but it's still kind of interesting.
The Queensland State Library, or the State Library of Queensland, I think it's really called, has a bunch of newspapers and magazines and periodicals, but you have to go get them in person because The ones that were scanned online were really hard to read, like really hard to read. So I was like, okay, I just need to be on my Chromebook and on my phone. And so I blew them up and I wanted to read more about it. But unfortunately, I still couldn't read it. I was very disappointed.
Yeah, that's actually, it's, showing my inner nerd, but one of my dreams, if I win the lottery, is to go to these places like, where the Blue Book files are, or, where the documents you're talking about, and get better scans of them, because the Blue Book scans we have from Fold 3 are pretty good, and it's incredibly awesome that we have those, but a lot of them are incredibly difficult to read. So I wonder if we have, newer technology that would make that stuff a lot easier to read. If you had really high quality gear, the best technology that you could afford, and you went there, you might be able to get much better images of these things.
It's funny though, is the state library also has an archive which they've labeled the X-Files.
Really?
Yeah, really, truly. And in there, I found police correspondences detailing UFO sightings from like the early 50s. But there were only 88 photos. 7,000 people had viewed them. So I got really excited because initially it kind of looked like Blue Book files, like Blue Book archives. But it's like the Blue Book archives with maybe like the first page of each file and everything else is missing.
Ah, bummer.
So yeah, for example, there was a correspondence between a chief and his minion. And they're like, hey, someone reported this plane. It didn't make any sound. We should go check it out. And then nothing. Like that's the whole correspondence. Or, hey, we think some kids were playing with some flares. Let's go check it out. And then nothing.
Yeah. That's kind of like, it's such a, I think I'm going to fill in for ETA here. What a cock tease.
There was one that was kind of funny, though. There was one. It was in March of 55. In the Townsville district in Ingham Station, and inquiries were made with about an alleged unidentified plane by one Arthur Pugh. However, in the police statement, it says, and I quote, he was a person of low mentality. So apparently he was a boxer, and they said he exhibited punch drunkenness. And that it was a figment of his imagination.
Well, I mean, it's not all boxers are super well spoken, because they tend to not be the most educated people, which is why they turned to boxing in the first place to make money.
In the 50s.
Yeah. So we're talking about, post Great Depression here, where the economy is still recovering. So, yeah, I mean, and this is also well before they had good regulation. So it's possible this guy was really was punch drunk. Yeah.
And a person of low mentality.
And it's
poor Arthur.
I wonder if he was a minority, and that's sort of like a racist evaluation.
Oh, boo. That's terrible. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be unfortunate?
Yeah.
But that's part of history. And I think that we should not necessarily try to hide history, but we don't know for a fact that that's the case. So, but I have seen some accounts that are not necessarily, it's crazy to think that in the 50s, which is not that long ago, we still had some, but that's a whole other episode, which probably is not appropriate for this podcast anyways. So let's move along. Did you have any more cases you wanted to talk about?
No, that one I was just like punch drunk.
Yeah.
Punch drunk.
That's a real thing. I mean, you've seen certain boxers that they just, their career goes on for too long, and they just take too many shots, and then, they have like slurred speech and stuff like that. I've met some in person. I went to a California Boxing Hall of Fame ceremony one time, and I met certain boxers such as Bobby Chacon, who's unfortunately passed away now. And if you're a boxing fan, you probably know who he is, but he was a pretty big deal back in the day. But when I met him, he could barely talk, and it's just, but here's the thing though. A lot of the boxers who end up punch drunk, they are also the boxers who are known to party a great deal. And Bobby Chacon, for example, was known to partake quite heavily of the booger sugar, for example. And this is
Is
just
that cocaine?
yeah, cocaine.
Okay.
Now, this is a
I've heard that
rumor.
before.
I don't know, it's a rumor, but he had a reputation, right? And that's kind of the way it goes with a lot of these athletes. And I think what happens is they are in incredible shape. You have to be in absolutely incredible shape to be a boxer. I mean, like when I was in high school, sometimes we'd get drunk and put on some boxing gloves and, fight a little bit. And we would all be, we were in okay shape. We were young and some of us were athletic, but after like, I'd say a good minute and a half, we would be totally exhausted. So in order to go like 12 or 15 rounds, it's insane. So these guys, they can drink a lot. They can do a lot of drugs. I think that their systems can withstand quite a lot of stuff, but they're still taking quite a lot of stuff and it still takes its toll over time. And I suspect that may be part of the equation for punch drunkenness. That's just what I've seen, used to be a huge boxing fan. And it seemed like pretty much across the board, the people that ended up with, some sort of punch drunkenness, they seem to also be the ones who partied an awful lot. Is that just my own observation bias? Is that a real thing? I don't know, but it's just something I noticed. I know it is hot. We need to get back to the case. All right. No more tangents. Anyway, so they called the police and the police came to investigate. Okay, here's another quote that I saw. This is from Mr. Panisi. Both George and I regret that we didn't know about former flying saucer research before the event, as they were the people who should have been notified and could have taken control of the whole thing. The footprints were about, here's a direct quote for, yeah, this is the footprints. Okay. The footprints were about 3 inches in diameter and looked like, and then he draws a sketch and he says the footmarks of a calf. And he says this, pointing to that, about 8 to 10 inches apart. By the frog, we meant there were no indentations on the heel and the soil remained loose and raised. So in other words, the object, whatever was causing the footprints, was not heavy. The large nest was 28 feet in diameter and clockwise, and the smaller nests were 8 feet and anti-clockwise. So there we go. We do have a direct quote talking about the footprints.
Awesome.
And what he's talking about there is that they went and I think George went and told some people at like a gas station or something, and shortly the place was overrun by hundreds and hundreds of people going to look at the area before any investigators were able to go there.
Well, because it's cool. You actually have some physical evidence that something happens. So who wouldn't want to go check it out?
If that happened near me, I would definitely go take a look, go take some pictures or whatever. It would be awesome. All right. George was quoted as saying, "Had anyone asked me 5 days ago if I believed in flying saucers, I'd have laughed and thought they were nuts. But now I know better. I have actually seen a spaceship. No one will ever convince me that I was imagining things." And then here's a witness account. Let me see what we're doing time-wise. Yeah, we're doing good time-wise. So I'll read this is a different witness account that I found in a different place. And it has some different details. So I'll go ahead and read over this one. "I was driving the tractor through a neighboring property on my way to my farm about 9 a.m. on Wednesday." So it wasn't 5:30, actually. It was 9 a.m. It's a different time than when the dog went nuts. "About 9 a.m. on Wednesday when I heard a loud hissing noise above the engine noise of the tractor. It sounded like air escaping from a tire, but the tractor tires seemed okay, so I drove on. At first I ignored the sound, but suddenly I saw a spaceship rise at great speed out of a swamp called Horseshoe Lagoon about 25 yards in front of me. It was blue-gray, about 25 feet across and 9 feet high. It spun at a terrific rate as it rose vertically to about 60 feet and then made a shallow dive and rose sharply. Traveling at a fantastic speed, it headed off in a southwesterly direction. It was out of sight in seconds. I saw no portholes or antenna, and there was no sign of life either in or about the ship." I think that part was from, we read that before. "On my way home to Tully that night, I met Albert Panisi, who owns the property where I saw the saucer. He believed me straight away and told me he had been dreaming for a week that a flying saucer would land on his property."
What?
Kind of weird. He said that about 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday, his dog suddenly went mad and bounded off towards the lagoon. But they did find multiple saucer nests, so it's possible that those were created earlier in the day.
Or what if he wasn't dreaming?
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. What if? That suggests all sorts of things. What are you thinking, Agent Ether?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
You're thinking alien abduction.
I am.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good idea. That's awesome. All right, so he said he went and told some people at a service station. He said, then the fun started. They were convinced I was crackers and told me so. But he took them to the place where he saw the UFOs, and that's when people went nuts and whatever. Everybody trampled the area, destroying the footprints that were nearby. The next Thursday, two tourists named Tom Warren and Hank Penning were walking around the lagoon. They found a second and third saucer nest that looked like a few days old. They looked like they were not so fresh. But these ones, they were different sizes. They were about 25 yards from the first saucer nest. They were about 8 feet across and 12 feet across. These nests, some of them were clockwise and some of them were counterclockwise. Now, there are some accounts of an additional fourth and fifth saucer nest, but it's not necessarily conclusive across the board that that's the case, but it appears that there were at least 3, possibly 5 saucer nests in this swampy area.
Yeah, that's what I read too.
Yeah. Did you see 5 or did you see 3?
I saw both.
You saw both. Yeah, I saw both as well. And it's not clear. Again, the difficulty in researching these things is quite often a lot of your information will come from news articles and things like that. And as I've said before on the show, journalists are not necessarily the most accurate reporters of information. Sometimes they sensationalize things. In fact, this goes all the way back to the first episode. For example, the Hillsdale College, which was the young women students, just a very simple example. You can look at newspapers that, the first one said, oh, there was 27 girls that saw it. And then the next one is like, oh, there was 35. And then by the last one, it's like, oh, there were 85 girls that saw it. And like, they just try to sensationalize things to get the clicks or, back in the day to sell more papers, as the case may be.
I did run across a news article. It was a clipping and it was stamped, like hand stamped, January 26, 66.
Yeah.
And it said that the grass was free of radioactivity, specifically alpha, beta, and gamma rays. So I guess they came in and they had the local university take it out for testing, which is very interesting to me that somebody took it seriously.
Right. Well, you have physical evidence.
They had physicists examining it, though. Can you imagine you're a physicist at a local university and you hear about this and you're like, hell yeah, I want to take a look.
Yeah, that would be super exciting. Yeah. And this is, I did see a little tidbit about that. Yeah, I saw, but I didn't know that it was from university. I just saw that it was tested.
Local university, yeah.
That's so cool. But yet also, I think this was back in the day. I mean, obviously people back then were still ridiculed. We've talked about it before, but this was back in the day before the whole topic became a complete and total joke to most people. So some people still did take it seriously back then. And a lot of people saw stuff. Like in 66, a lot of people were seeing stuff all over the world, as I said before. So
I think it's less of a joke now since the UFO hearings with Congress.
Yeah, and we've talked about that a little bit. Like, we haven't done a whole episode. Well, we did actually do whole episodes.
We did.
But the thing is like, I mentioned it, like, why would the government do a complete 180 on that? Whereas before, it was an absolute policy to ridicule witnesses, to harass them, to downplay them, and to come up with explanations, mundane explanations under any circumstances at all costs to explain away what they had seen. Why, after so many years, decades of this, why did they do a complete 180? And I've talked about my theories on this in the past, but I don't know. What do you think, Agent Ether?
Well, I'm not sure, but my point was I don't think people are taking it as such a joke anymore.
I know. I think that it's changing a little bit. Yeah. I don't know. It's still pretty
taboo.
Yeah,
ridiculed.
It depends on who you're talking. Some people are open-minded. If I tell some people, I say, "Oh yeah, I got a show called the Alien Conspiracy Podcast." Because we just changed the show name, so I haven't been able to tell too many people about this show name. But anyways, some people would think, "Oh, that's really interesting." Other people are like, "What?" You're like, "Oh, you're one of those guys." Okay, but I don't really care that much because, it's sort of like
In fact, he's wearing a tinfoil hat right now.
I am indeed. Well, no, aluminum foil actually.
When we start the live show, you'll be able to see it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
You'll see I'm not lying or making things up.
It's actually a really good way of screening out people that I wouldn't want to spend time with anyways. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Right.
not that I only want to spend time with people that are into UFOs, but the type of person would be like, oh, you believe this? Pfft, well, you're an idiot then. It's like, that's not really the type of people that I enjoy spending time with anyways. So it's sort of a good way of weeding out the riffraff, so to speak, open-minded people, even if they believe different things than me, are just more interesting in general. All right. So let's see. There are additional accounts of saucer nests in the area. I was not able to authenticate any of them, but apparently it was a thing at the time in the area, not just necessarily in the Tully area. There was an RAAF investigation, apparently. So we already talked about some of this. We talked about that. So now there was the Dominion reported on February 26th that another nest was found by two school boys 1 mile east of Sydney as they were taking a shortcut through the swamp on their way home from school. And the description was pretty much identical to the Tully saucer nests. It was 20 feet in diameter, and it was pretty much the same deal, only they didn't see a UFO, they just saw the saucer nest. The boys said, tall reeds were flattened into the mud as if by some tremendous force, and all were in a perfectly clockwise position. And they also detected a pungent chemical smell. They didn't say sulfur or anything like that, but you could describe sulfur as a pungent chemical smell. And they didn't, the previous witnesses did not say sulfur specifically. They just said it smelled like sulfur, which means that it didn't smell exactly the same, but that's the closest thing they can think of.
Correct.
I guess that makes sense. All right. Now I did find a newspaper clipping from Tuesday, June the 2nd, 1981. And I found this. What are you doing, Agent Ether?
Oh, sorry. This chair isn't very comfortable.
Oh, I see. Okay. We should get you a more comfortable one.
We should get more comfortable chairs, period.
How about something like this? Would you like something like this?
I could just bring over my office chair.
We should do that next time.
Okay. Flag.
Nah, whatever. It's
fine. Come on.
I'm not going to do it. Ain't going to do it. That's a tangent. All right. Some people like the tangents. It breaks up the episode, makes it less monotonous. It's fine. Trust me. I've listened to a ton of podcasts. Tangents are a thing.
All right.
Anyways, so this newspaper article from 1981 was pretty interesting. The title of the article is called "The Town UFOs Love to Buzz." Unfortunately, I didn't see the publisher, so I'm not sure which newspaper this was. But it starts, Brisbane. The North Queensland town of Tully in Australia's wettest area seems to have become a convention center for unidentified flying objects. According to one local resident, there have been more than 100 sightings of UFOs in the past 15 years. They've been seen in the cane fields and in the town, said Mrs. Noble. We found strange markings on the ground and seen lots of weird lights and had reports of mother crafts surrounded by little ones. Now, it's not clear if by little ones they mean a landed craft with EBEs or if they mean a mothership with little ships.
It sounds like little ships to me.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me too. I wasn't entirely clear though. The uninvited flying objects which buzz Tully apparently have a particular fondness for Horseshoe Lagoon, the scene of the famous Tully nest incident 15 years ago. And then it goes on to explain the Tully sighting, which we've already explained, so I'll skip that part. All right, now that's basically the Tully sighting. There's not a whole lot to it, right? They just, you have a witness that saw it, you have other witnesses in the area, and they left these little marks. Now, Agent Ether, you found some stuff that this might be the inspiration for crop circles.
Yeah, just very briefly, actually, we did a whole episode on crop circles, which was
so cool.
A really good episode. What is it called? The people who study crop circles?
Circleologists?
Circleologists, yeah.
I don't know. I made that up.
Serologists.
Serologists.
I think
okay.
with a C, like CERE. Zoology.
Like cereal?
Serology. Sure. But Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, who confessed to making crop circles, and that hit the news, said they were actually inspired by the 1966 Tully nests. And that's why they faked the crop circles.
So these might be the OG crop circles.
The original. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know about that, and I find that incredibly interesting. So that even though these two people probably hoaxed some crop circles, they were inspired by a real UFO event.
Alleged.
Well, whatever. Pretty interesting stuff. And, the jury is still out. I like to believe that crop circles are not necessarily all man-made, but you never know. All right. So did you have anything else on that before I go on?
No, I do not.
All right. Before we wrap this one up, let's see what time we're at here. Yeah, we're making good time. Okay. So before we wrap this one up, I did find a bunch of other sightings that were very similar to the Tully Saucer nests. I'm not going to talk about all of them because we don't have enough time, but I'll just mention a couple of them. So first, there's the bar incident. So in Garrison, Iowa, on July 13th, 1969, so a couple of years, 3 years later, Patty Barr and her cousin Kathy Marr, who were teenagers at the time, were preparing to go to bed in the upstairs bedroom of the Barr farm home. So they were in their bedroom doing their thing, probably changing into the pajamas or whatever. I don't know what girls do. Agent Ether could tell you that. Doing
their nails, talking about the boys.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. So it was 7.5 miles south of Garrison, Iowa, at a farm. And when they were doing their thing, they heard a sound like a low flying jet roaring outside. So, it sounds like pretty loud. So Patty runs to the window, which is facing to the north, and then sees something, and she yells to her cousin. The cousin comes over, and they both saw the same thing, which was an object that had a dull metallic finish, which was easily discerned because it had two rows of lights which were arranged across the face of it at the midline. It appeared to look like two coffee saucers placed rim to rim, and it rotated as it hovered. Sound familiar? Sounds a little familiar to me. The sighting lasted only for a few seconds, and then the object left at such a high speed that the girls did not know precisely in which direction that it went, except that it went past their window. And then the area where it had hovered was glowing red.
Huh.
Kind of weird. And interestingly, the girls were not frightened from the experience. That's what they told investigators later on. They said, it didn't scare us. We were just curious, which I don't know. Maybe the farm girls are a little tougher of spirit than your average individual, because I'd be crapping my pants if I saw something like that.
Because we're city slickers.
Yeah, we're city slickers. That'd be what in the hell? I'd be ducking and covering, especially back then. What a crazy sight. That would definitely scare the crap out of me. So they told their story the next day at breakfast. Mr. Barr said that it was probably just a figment of their imagination.
Both of them.
Yeah. But later sometimes kids tell funny stories. Maybe they watched a sci-fi movie, because there were alien movies back then. It was not like unheard of. There was tons of sci-fi going on back then. So they probably just figured, they were just watching a movie, or they read a story in the paper, or who knows what. So he probably just thought they were imagining things or coming up with a story. That's pretty reasonable. But later that morning, he found a circular 40-foot diameter patch where the girls said that they had seen the UFO. And he was a farmer. It was a farm. They had a field of beans, and it was in the bean field where this 40-foot patch was. And the area was almost bare, and the bean vines were burned, but only in the circle, not outside of the circle. And it said, in the article, it said that there was no evidence of fire. And I'm not sure what that means really, because the vines were burned, but there was no evidence of fire. I'm not sure what that description indicates, other than the burned area was contained within that circle, and the circle was visible from the air. It was really visible. And this is really interesting, because what if this happened in an area that was not 5 feet deep water, but it was just a regular dirt? This is what it might look like, I guess. I don't know. Now, some people think that it was a lightning strike or some kind of fireball, whatever whatever that means. I could tell you from experience, not direct experience, not being right next to it, but lightning has struck and started fires where we live in this area, not too far from here. And I don't think it makes a perfect 40-foot diameter circle. That's kind of strange. But anyways, Patty later told investigators that she was sure the object was from outer space and that it wasn't anything earthly. And that's that case. You might be able to look into it and find a little bit more details and stuff, but that's, the short version. Another one is from Cherry Creek, New York. This one happened at 8:20 p.m. on August 19th, 1965. Harold Butcher, who was 16 years old, was milking cows on his parents' dairy farm, and it was in a barn. So the cows are in the barn, he's milking them, and this is near Cherry Creek, New York. He was listening to the news on a transistor radio, and he had a tractor running to power the milking machine, which apparently was broken down and unable to power itself. He heard he had these things all happen at the same time. He heard static on the radio. The tractor motor stopped, and the bull that was tethered near the barn started to freak out. He said that the bull made sounds like I have never heard come from an animal before. He looked out the window and saw a large elliptical object descending onto the ground about a quarter mile away. It looked like it was about 50 feet long and football shaped. Football shaped is another shape that a flying saucer could potentially make under the correct circumstances. Anyways, it made a beep beep sound, stayed on the ground for a few seconds, and then shot straight up into the clouds overhead. Harold yelled for his family, and when they came out, they noticed a strange odor. They also saw a greenish glow in the clouds. The bull that had been tethered still was tethered, but it was tethered to a sturdy steel bar, which was now bent by the animal's panicked attempt to flee. Harold's mother phoned the police, and before they got to the farm, 4 more witnesses saw the object. The USAF investigated the case, Project Blue Book apparently, and they found a purplish liquid where the object had touched down and grass that was singed or burned. They also saw 2 track-like depressions in the ground. There was another sighting the next day by State Trooper Richard Ward, who saw it during the evening time. He said it had 8 circular lights and flew twice as fast as a jet. It made a soft purring sound as it flew by. And this was only a couple miles away from the farm where it was originally witnessed. So those are just 2 of them. There's a bunch more, but we don't really have time to do that. We're getting towards the end here, but before we check out, what are your final thoughts on this case, Agent Ether?
Well, I just found it really fascinating. I had never heard of nests before. And when I first read about the case, I just assumed it was a crop circle and they were just calling it nests because it was the, term that was coined. But it was very interesting. And I haven't heard much about that since. People don't really talk about nests. It's all about crop circles.
Yeah, and I wonder if that term is a local term that they use in Australia. Maybe it's still used to this day. I'm not sure. It's possible, I guess.
I think it's a very interesting case. And you just have one person, one sighting here. Sounds plausible to me.
Yeah, and you actually have multiple witnesses who saw the UFO, but you only have one person that saw it at the nest, I guess, at least for the Tully Saucer Nest. And you have a bunch of similar cases all over the place, all over the world, really. But as far as the Tully Saucer Nest, people said that they didn't see any indication that machinery or anything else was brought in. They didn't see any vehicle tracks or anything like that. So if this was done by a person, I suppose it would be possible to hoax it. You could maybe do it with like a piece of wood that you could use to flatten the area out. And then if you had some kind of torch, maybe you could crisp the things, the reeds, I suppose. It would be, I think, fairly difficult to do.
I don't know. Pulling those reeds out by their roots from the swamp.
Yeah.
That takes some effort. And like you said, that would take some machinery.
Right.
And we're not talking about just like a machete or something.
Right. So yeah, I think so too. I don't know what to make of this case, but we do have, pretty credible witnesses who weren't trying to sell books or anything like that. You have multiple witnesses, you have multiple sites, you have physical evidence, we have photographs. It's a really interesting case, and I think it's a good case. I don't know what it was. I have no theories myself, other than perhaps some grad students from Proxima Centauri, perhaps, which is one of my favorite theories now. But yeah, it's a really, really fun case. I'm glad we did this one. All right, I think that's all we got for you this time around. Thank you guys so much for listening. And before we head out, don't forget to check out our brand new merch store that Agent Ether was so kind to set up on Redbubble. I haven't ordered anything off of it yet, so I want to do that just to check out the quality, because our previous store, we got rid of it because the quality was very low. The t-shirts, like the printing, didn't stay on for very long before it started to peel. So hopefully this one's a little bit better. If anybody wants to be a guinea pig, check it out. Links in the link tree on the description. And yeah, I guess that's all we got for you.
And until next time, keep it strange.